Attorneys for the 5 children of Daniel Prude, a black man who died after being restrained by police during a mental health episode, announced a federal lawsuit on Monday against the city of Rochester, where at least 6 police officers are alleged to have participated in the wrongful death and civil rights violations, according to the Associated Press. Attorneys for the family stated the family claims in the lawsuit in U.S. District Court that both the actions of the Rochester police and an attempted cover-up by the department and city government violated Prude's constitutional rights. A grand jury in February declined to bring criminal charges against the officers. Daniel Prude died in March 2020, several days after police officers, whom Prude's brother had called for help, put a spit hood over his head and pressed his naked body against the street until he stopped breathing. Now, we're all familiar with this case. We're all enraged by this case. And we were also enraged when we found out that the grand jury decided not to indict the officers for any offense whatsoever. But what I was most impressed by is by Attorney General Letitia James. I stand for this woman because what she's gone ahead and done is she filed a motion with the judge to release the minutes of the grand jury. Now, they're not going to be able to know the names or any of that particular kind of information about the grand jury, but people will be able to see what happened during the grand jury proceedings and what led to them deciding to not file charges against them. You know, and one thing that she did say on her Twitter page, as I have contended throughout my entire career, there can be no accountability without transparency, and the public deserves to know what transpires behind closed doors. That is why I filed a motion with the court to have the grand jury proceedings of this case unsealed and made available to the public, which the judge has granted. As soon as the judge authorizes, my office will release those proceedings so the Prude family, the Rochester community, and communities across the country will no longer be kept in the dark. This is a critical step in effecting the change that is so desperately needed.
Yeah, I agree. And here's a man that called the police on his brother because he needed to help him. And we saw what happened here. And again, you know, we're talking about 2 stories back to back that just rips your heart out because this should have not have happened. You hear the audio, how they spoke to this man, the way they treated him as he was pinned to the ground and couldn't breathe. They said, "Be quiet or we're going to tase you." Why? He's already pinned to the ground. So it's almost like they took pleasure and pride in doing this, yet they can't be charged.
Right. You want to talk about, you know, heartbreaking. After seeing, you know, that his family is filing this lawsuit, I wanted to, obviously, I think like all of us, learn a little bit more, you know, about the family now. And watching his daughter, it was hard to watch his daughter say, you know, my dad was not the animal that they treated him like. That's what she said. And, you know, there are kids at the outside of all of this. There are children who this is their father, just the same as in George Floyd's. There's a daughter.
That's true.
We're all, you know, talking about this and how this affects our lives and how this affects our future and different laws and criminal justice. There are children. These people had kids and families. Yeah.
So, you know, for this case, of course, 1 + 1 should equal 2. You know, I was reading the definition of wrongful death. Of course, it makes sense. A person's death caused by another person's negligence or by another person's intent to cause the deceased individual harm. It makes sense, right? You know, for me, of course, coming off the story that we were talking about yesterday that happened in Rochester, as well, it seems like the Rochester police has a problem with being aggressive with black people, and I feel like they have a case, and I hope that you know, a solid lawsuit, and I hope they can get millions of dollars from this.
I hope they got a lot of money because there's a lot of cases where they got to cut some checks.
I think Rochester, a check definitely deserves to be cut for sure. All right, guys. So moving right along, the Supreme Court on Monday declined to hear an appeal for a lawsuit brought against Cleveland police officers, which challenges the scope of qualified immunity. The legal doctrine has been used in the past to protect officers from lawsuits that allege excessive force, reports Reuters. Qualified immunity has been the subject of scrutiny by many civil rights advocates, and eliminated qualified immunity was one of the key demands of demonstrators during nationwide protests in 2020 following the killing of George Floyd. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, passed by the House last week, would re-examine qualified immunity for officers. It would also ban chokeholds at the federal level, prevent no-knock warrants in federal drug cases, and outlaw racial profiling. So to me, it seemed, this has been in place since 1967. Qualified immunity, in my opinion, is one of those back out clauses that you put to make sure, just in case if I do something, like how if you have a contract and it's kind of like, hey, just in case I want to accidentally do something, on purpose, whatever, let me put qualified immunity. I'm happy that this is on its way out, because it's just, police are killing black people at alarming rates, and so I just, I don't even understand why we have why it even is around anymore. It's been around for a long time, and I feel like we need to abolish it at once.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, okay, well, in this case specifically, the one that the Supreme Court decided not to hear, Cleveland police officers, they were dressed in plain clothes. Mm-hmm. They were driving an unmarked car. And they beat and arrested a man for standing outside of his own home. Yeah. And, his argument is, I didn't know they were police when they were commanding me or telling me this, because they were dressed in regular clothes and driving a regular car. Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court will not hear the case challenging the law that protects them from simply being sued.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's unbelievable when you think about that. And some people feel like the police are under attack, and that's why they want to try and hold on to this situation. No, we're the ones.
No, white supremacy is under attack. Yeah. That's what's under attack
that's really
right now.
At the end of the day.
That's what's, and Brooke, I love the way that you described that. You added the storytelling element to understanding how it is that police officers abuse their position because they know qualified immunity exists. Mm-hmm. I was reading this story on Forbes. Federal courts have upheld qualified immunity to Fresno officers accused of stealing more than $225,000 in cash and rare coins, an Idaho SWAT team that bombarded an innocent mom's home with tear gas, and a Georgia sheriff's deputy who accidentally shot a 10-year-old boy while aiming for the family dog. All of these officers have gotten off under the qualified immunity statute. Mm-hmm. So it really, really needs to pass.
Yeah. Oh, can I just really quickly, I saw this tweet from March 3rd. So it wasn't like recent, like super recent. It was like, earlier in the week. So someone on Twitter said this isn't going to pass without qualified immunity because no one will want to be a police officer anymore. And I was like, that was one of those unthought out tweets. But I'm like, seriously, like, do we really care about if people don't want to be a police officer anymore? I don't know. I love Twitter, but sometimes people say some crazy things.